That was the biggest selling song by the Cowsills, Hair. And we have with us right now live, and it's an honor and a privilege to have him on the show, Mr. Bob Cowsill. Bob, welcome to Classic Pop Culture.
Hello from the West Coast.
My guest right now, Ian Lloyd. Ian, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
My pleasure, Steve. How are you doing out there?
Question mark, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, it's me. That's my catchphrase, everybody.
And we are joined by the creator, the writer, the singer of that incredible They're Coming to Take Me Away, Mr. Jerry Samuels. Jerry, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
And we have with us the man who wrote that classic song, Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Goodbye, Mr. Gary DiCarlo. Gary, thank you so much for being with us.
No, not a problem, Steve. I'm happy that you asked me.
And I am privileged and honored to have with us right now the author of The Outsiders, That Was Then, This Is Now, Tex, Rumblefish, Taming the Star Runner, and a score of others, Ms. S.E. Hinton. Ms. Hinton, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, let's wait to see how I do before you say that.
One of the original 5 legendary MTV VJs, VJs from back in the 80s. Our guest host on Sirius XM, Miss Nina Blackwood. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Just like our love
and we are so happy to have the lead singer of all of those wonderful songs and so many more, Ms. Spanky McFarlane.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Steve.
1, 2, 3 red lights. Simon Says that can only mean one thing. The legendary group 1910 Fruit Gum Company, and our guest, the founder, leader of the 1910 Fruit Gum Company, still performing 1910 Fruit Gum Company, Mr. Frank Jekyll. Frank, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad to be here.
Everybody, my guest right now live, the one and only, the legendary Mr. Bobby Vinton. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to be on the air. I'd like to hand the phone over to Mr. Eddie Brigatti. Morning.
Hi, Eddie. Good morning, Mr. Brigatti. Oh, my gosh, what a surprise. What a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
What brings you to Joe Russo's house? That's what I want to know.
No, Joe Russo's at my house.
Oh, okay. Well, then. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome to our show right now the one and only Little Anthony. Anthony, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
That's cool. Thanks. I'm the kind of guy that likes to talk a lot. I'm not one of those, I want to be alone,
Now, I am so very happy to have Lanny, the genius Poffo, with us. Lanny, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'll tell you what, we're going to have a great interview, and I'm feeling really excited about it.
And you just listened to a medley of some of the best love songs in the disco era, of all time, of any era. And they were sung by, of course, our guest, the legendary Carol Williams. Miss Williams, thank you so much for being on Classic Pop Culture.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. And, already I know we're going to be good friends because you are a native of Montclair, New Jersey, and I went to Montclair State College.
Oh, that's wonderful because my brother went there, and he also was in the class that Melba Moore was in.
Oh, and our guest, Mr. Terry Sylvester. Terry, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me, and what so nice to hear that beautiful Alan Parsons Project song. A lot of people don't play that enough. I'd love to hear that more. It's such a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song and a beautiful vocal. I mean, Terry, your voice is so distinctive. I mean, our guest, the legendary Ms. Norma Jean Wright. Ms. Wright, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
A BB class road.
And of course, BB Class Road, co-written with Gene Parsons by our next guest, legendary sound man extraordinaire, Mr. Dinky Dawson. Dinky, thank you so much for being with us. This is such a thrill.
You're welcome there, Steve, and you're welcome, everyone.
The legendary Mr. Cyril Neville. Mr. Neville, it is a privilege to be speaking with you, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
Her legions of fans know her as the ultimate scream queen and the ultimate fantasy model. It's a pleasure to be speaking with Ms. Debbie D. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Vocalist, songwriter, performer, actress, certainly one of the most beloved R&B singers of our generation, Miss Linda Clifford. Welcome to the show, Ms. Clifford.
Thank you so much, Steve. What a lovely introduction.
And our next guest, everyone, absolutely needs no introduction, but he certainly deserves an introduction. He has sold over 100 million records. He's been awarded 23 gold singles and 9 gold and platinum albums. He's had over 300 covers of his songs. And I want to know what's taking so long to induct Mr. Tommy James into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tommy, thank you for joining us.
Great talking with you.
And we are joined by Miss Tina Kraus, actress, producer, director, model. Tina creates scene designs. And Tina, already my first question to you is, how do you even find the time to speak with me tonight? You are one busy person.
You want to hear something really funny?
Yes.
As soon as I'm done with you, I'm going to a meeting about the next film and TV show that I'd like to put together.
And, of course, the iconic Only Women Bleed from Alice Cooper. And that has certainly to do with the title of the book of our next guest, Not Only Women Bleed. It is a pleasure and an honor to speak with Mr. Dick Wagner. Mr. Wagner, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having me on. So,
and we are joined right now by certainly one of my old-time musical heroes. I am a child of the 60s, and the first time I heard the opening line to the word fire, and I heard it was The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, I said, this Arthur Brown is the coolest. And right now, I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Mr. Arthur Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, hopefully we'll be able to follow it up soon by playing over there.
And we just heard Australia from the Kinks, one of the all-time great albums, Arthur. But there's certainly a reason why I led with Australia, because we are joined now by two very talented singers, songwriters, all the way from the land down under, from Australia, Mr. Joe Mandica and Grace Marino. Joe and Grace, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey.
Do you think I'm sexy? Can only mean one person. The very cool actress, model, Jasmine St. Clair. Jasmine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your show. What perfect ring entrance music was. I thought I had the best ring entrance music.
You really do. And that's, of course, that's not the Rod Stewart version. That's the Revolting Cox version, which is definitely a cooler version. And our guest right now is one of the most beloved actresses in cinema history. She played one of the most beloved characters, Zuzu, in It's a Wonderful Life, and she has many other pictures to her credit as well. Our guest right now, Miss Carolyn Grimes. Miss Grimes, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Well, thank you, and that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Oh, in the movie. Do you ever get tired of reciting your famous line?
Never.
Could I impose upon you as we say goodbye?
All right.
What's that line?
Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
I have goosebumps just now. I really do.
Good.
And of course, everyone, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. The song can mean only one thing. We are so pleased and so honored to have with us the singer, songwriter of that classic, incredibly classic Christmas song. Dr. Elmo is with us on the show. Dr. Elmo, thank you so much for being with us, sir.
My pleasure, Steve. It's great to be on with you.
And we are joined once again from a few weeks ago, the director of a fantastic upcoming documentary called The Wrecking Crew. And before we speak with Mr. Denny Tedesco, let me just go through this list. The Beach Boys, Frank Sinatra, Nancy Sinatra, Sonny and Cher, Jan and Dean, The Monkees, Gary Lewis and the Playboys, the Mamas and the Papas, the Tijuana Brass, Ricky Nelson, Johnny Rivers, Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. And if I continue, we're not going to have any time for the interview. But all of these performers were backed by studio musicians, session musicians, who later became known as the Wrecking Crew. And to talk to us about it right now, I have so many questions for him, is the director of the upcoming Wrecking Crew, Mr. Denny Tedesco. Denny, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And we're joined now by two-time Olympic medal winner, four-time Olympian for the USA, speed skater, Jen Rodriguez. Jen, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And my next guest, everyone, is a gentleman, a singer, a great singer, who I first learned about from the Initiative CD. Just a little backstory. I met Mr. Jeff Brown from Australia at a party here in the United States. He handed me his CD by his friend, Joe Mantica. He said, give this a listen, and I heard the songs on here, and they are fantastic. And I'm happy to be speaking with one of the artists on the Initiative, and he has his own wonderful career that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But let me introduce, first of all, Mr. Fortunato Isgro. Fortunato, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you very much.
Other than the legendary Mr. Billy Paul. Mr. Paul, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
As I mentioned, we came into the interview with your song, Am I Black Enough For You? But that's also a movie that you have made with Blanche Williams. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's a documentary about my life, our life, and, you know, because we've been together for 47 years, and she met me before I was famous, and talked about all the trials and tribulations that we've been through the years.
I loved it, and couple of the reasons that I loved it are the talents of Marty Penrose and his daughter Taylor Penrose. So, Marty and Taylor, first of all, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. How are you? Thanks very much for that. Yeah, and it's great to be on the show. Thanks for having us on, and it's a great pleasure to be representing the Initiative via Joe Mandica.
Tommy Rowe, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Hi, Steve. How you doing? It's good to be with you.
And our next guest, everyone, all month we've been speaking with so many of the great artists from the Initiative CD. Now, just going back, a little backstory, a few weeks ago we had the extreme pleasure of speaking with Mr. Joe Mandica and Grace Marino, two of the artists from the Initiative CD. And we have another artist with us. And everyone, I'm married to an Italian, so I want to get Nino's last name correct. Nino Bisignano. How's that, Nino?
Very good, Stephen. Very good.
All right. Nino, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to speak with you. I really love your work on the Initiative. Beautifully, as our next guest, he toured with the Beatles and with Tommy Rowe, and he is still so active. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Chris Montez. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. It's really nice to be on the air with you. Thank you for saying hello to me and calling me here.
Our guest is the original voice of the Buckinghams, except no imitations, everyone. Dennis Stefano, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's great to be on the show, man. It's great.
The number 4 guitar riff of all time, says Guitar Magazine, of our next guest, the legendary Vince Martell, joins us. Mr. Martell, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Steve? Thanks for having me on.
Ever since you never heard of me, the one and only legendary Melanie Safka Melanie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
You know, I tell you,
I'm coming to Massachusetts. You're in Massachusetts, right?
Well, actually, my engineer, Rick, is. I'm in New Jersey. I'm on the East Coast. I actually saw you a couple of weeks ago at the NYC 50, the Beatle, the show you did at Town Hall.
Super. Yeah.
Land of Boohoo from 2010 to CD. Our next guest has worked with so many people, including, but certainly not limited to, The Roots, Chrissie Hynde, Tito Puente, Grace Jones, Paul Anka, Wanda Sykes, the Olsen twins, Phoebe Snow, Debbie Gibson. He's acted in movies with Spike Lee, with Madonna. He's had a recurring role in Miami Vice, his latest film, On the Road, based on Jack Kerouac's novel, and of course, a member of Kid Creole and the Coconuts, and Dr. Buzzard's original Savannah Band, the one and only, the former 12-year-old genius, Mr. Koti Mundi. Koti, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's indeed a plum-pleasing pleasure to be here. Actually, it's a plum-pleasing pleasure to be anywhere nowadays.
Right? It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome Ms. Leslie Gore. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Please call me, I was going to tell you to please call me Steve, but I think Leslie would be more appropriate. Please call me Leslie.
Okay, Steve, I will.
Thank you thank you for this opportunity to talk with you, Steve. I'm very pleased to do it.
Oh, please. Pleasure, I assure you.
And I do answer to Steve, just in case it comes.
Okay, good. And I answer to Leslie every once in a while as well. So I think
well, you should. There's no question about it.
In concert, and it really is a real pleasure to have as a guest Mr. Chris Nunley from the Royal Guardsmen. Chris, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to talk with you, everybody. We've had a good time.
And our next guest is an actress, model, and producer who's appeared in many movies and has appeared in over 30 national commercials. She's graced the pages of Maxim, FHM, and Playboy, and I will get to look at her pictures as soon as I'm done with the articles in those magazines. But she's also acted in movies with fellow stars such as James Caan, Billy Crystal, Sean Astin, Christopher Lloyd, Judd Nelson, and Kane Hodder, just to name a few. She's a staunch animal activist, right away, that's thumbs up in my book, and it's been said of Chanel Ryan that she possesses the combo of stunning beauty and comedic timing, and her dedication to character and fantastic acting chops easily make her one of filmdom's favorite actresses. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome to the show Ms. Chanel Ryan. Welcome to the show, Chanel.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm so glad I can finally get to speak with you because right now, by someone, boy, if you talk about iconic roles in movies, he played Mike TV, the lovable, rude, disrespectful, know-it-all Mike TV in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But Paris Themin is so much more. There's so much more to Paris Themin, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Welcome, Mr. Paris Themin.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Doing great. First, I told you before we heard those two songs, Let's Go and the Batman theme from the Marquettes and the Routers. Our guest has written songs which we all know and love, and they've been covered by artists such as Cher, the Standells, Leslie Gore, Gary Lewis, Brian Hyland, countless others. We've heard his music in movies and TV shows such as Pulp Fiction, The Outsiders, Saturday Night Live, 21 Jump Street, The Wonder Years, Ally McBeal, Futurama, and on and on. He's a 2012 Global Music Award winner, screenwriter, and a film producer. He's currently has several projects in pre- and post-production. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is, everyone, to welcome Mr. Michael Z. Gordon to the show. Mr. Gordon, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
We have Mr. Charles Rose May. Charles, first of all, welcome.
Hey, thanks. It's been great to be back.
City. Please welcome our very busy guest, Ms. Debbie Dutch. Hi, Debbie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve. I'm so excited to be on your cool Steve Ludwig. What is it? Pop culture?
Close enough. Classic pop culture.
Classic.
pop culture.
That's
That's
right.
even cooler. I'm telling you, this
that
is
makes all the
fun.
difference in the world, Debbie.
And we are joined, everyone, by Zach and Natalie Wilkes. And they are I first heard of Zach and Natalie Wilkes from the incredible CD, the initiative that we've been speaking about over the last few weeks. First of all, Zach, Natalie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And Zach is the son-in-law of Mr. Joe Mantica, the driving force behind the initiative. And Natalie, he's your dad, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, just heard audio of the incredible journey that our next guest has taken. Mr. Ed Rudy was the only American reporter who traveled with the Beatles on the first full American tour. And what we just heard was John, Paul, and George, and Mal Evans. And tonight, February 11th, marking the 50th anniversary of the Washington, D.C. concert, Mr. Ed Rudy was there all the way. Mr. Ed Rudy, thank you for joining us.
I thank you for having me, Steve.
It's a pleasure.
It was an incredible journey, and it was certainly, it changed the world, and it was life-changing for me personally.
Before that, we heard the wrestler, Bruce Springsteen, and you all know why I play the wrestler. What some of you may not know is our next guest is a big R&B fan. Welcome, Mr. Evan Ginsberg.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And everyone, what a pleasure it is to welcome, loved by millions, really an iconic figure from our childhood and from, we all know and love Butch Patrick from the Munsters. He, of course, played Eddie Munster. Check out Munsters.com for one of the greatest websites you'll find on the internet. Butch Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction.
And our guest right now, everyone, is the author of, I'm telling you, it's an incredible book called The Beatle Who Vanished. Author Jim Birkenstadt is with us, and I will let Mr. Birkenstadt give us some background about what the book's about. But Beatle fans, non-Beatle fans, all music fans, this is a book you must add to your library. The Beatle Who Vanished, author Jim Birkenstadt. Jim, why don't you give us, first of all, welcome to the show, and could you give us a little background about the book? And I have a ton of questions for you.
Okay, well, Steve, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Couldn't agree more. Peter Noon has this gentleman's music as part of his regular rotation on his car player. 60sgaragebands.com says, I believe time will come to be a classic. My gosh, I cannot agree anymore. Our guests this evening, we've spoken with Joe Mantica. He's with us, and the leader of Toll Puddle Barters, Peter Rector. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Steve. Hi, Steve. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Our next guest is the queen of the horror bloggers, Zainab Ali of the Nightmare Nook. Zainab, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that by Maria Pinello and Phil Carollo, better known as Sage. Maria, Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having us on, Steve.
And going to the Delta from the new CD by Kim Simmons and Savoy Brown, debuting at number 5 on the Billboard Blues charts. One of the great things about having a show like this is me having the opportunity to speak with people I've admired for so many years. Mr. Kim Simmons, welcome to the show, sir.
No, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here talking to you.
The Yankees theme song. You heard some of the great highlights from this great Major League Baseball player's career. He is now an award-winning filmmaker. It is a real pleasure and an honor to speak with Mr. Billy Sample. Billy, welcome to the show.
Steve, I'm more than flattered. I don't think I've had an introduction like that. I don't have any more money, though, to give you, so you're on your own with that. I appreciate it. That sounds good. They don't even say that in my household like that.
Well, those last two songs were co-written by our next guest, and I'm telling you, I couldn't wait to speak with both of them. Such a pleasure to welcome Susan Cowsill and Russ Broussard. Welcome to the show, Susan and Russ.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay.
Surprise, surprise, Sweet Bird of Paradox from John Lennon's Walls and Bridges album. John, of course, singing, writing. He wrote that song for our next guest, Miss May Pang. May is an author, activist, radio show host. She was John Lennon's companion and confidant for really much longer than what most of the public knows as the 18-month Lost Weekend. The weekend was anything but a lost weekend. And in my opinion, it was John's most creative and positive and busy period in his musical life, and certainly due in no small part to May Pang's positive attitude toward life and toward John himself. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show Miss May Pang. Hi, May.
Hi, how are you, Steve? I just can't believe it. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, did I do all that? I guess I did.
That's all, everyone. Being a first-generation Beatles fan, I'm thrilled to be able to speak with the only big sister to a Beatle. We all know her. We all love her. Louise Harrison, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's my fun.
I'll tell you. Shall I call you Miss Harrison, Louise, or Lou?
You just call me Looney.
We have a lot to talk about. It is such a pleasure to welcome Mr. Paul Cowsill. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It is great to be here.
Nightmare Nook is such a wonderful blog. We're going to talk horror. We're going to talk about movies. Zainab Ali, welcome back to the show.
Well, I'm very glad to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Our next guest is an award-winning writer, actor, producer, director with over 100 film, TV, and stage credits. He studied writing and directing under Edmund J. Cambridge and Marlon Brando. He's a Cable Ace Award winner. He's written, at last count, this may already be undercounting, 14 plays and over 35 screenplays. He's received an NAACP theater nomination for Ted Lang's play George Washington's Boy. He's also known for John Singleton's Rosewood as the lovable character Big Baby, and the role of Darryl with Martin Lawrence in the hit series What's Happening Now. His latest project is called The Secret Weapon. We're going to be speaking about that in a few minutes, but you probably know Ken Sagoes best from his role as Kincaid, the soft-spoken Kincaid in Nightmare on Elm Street parts 3 and 4. It is such a pleasure to welcome our guest, Mr. Ken Sagoes. Ken, welcome to the show.
Welcome. I'm soft-spoken.
Oh, you know what? I might have had you confused with the character that was mute. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, Ken Sagoes is soft-spoken, but Kincaid is by far.
Yes. Before we even start speaking with April, you have to check out aprilhunterblog.com. Boy, talk about someone who speaks her mind. April, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Our next guest is an ex-Baltimore police officer, a wrestling personality turned actor. And boy, if you have seen the trailer for his upcoming movie, Brush with Danger, it's close to 900,000 hits so far. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Nikita Brezhnikov. Nikita, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Steve and Rick. It is an honor and pleasure to be here.
Average White Cats by our next guest. And boy, talk about a Renaissance person, guitarist, arranger, composer, educator. Mr. Frank DiBasolo is with us. Frank, what a pleasure it is to speak with you.
Oh, great to speak with you, Steve. So nice.
It's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Paul Peterson to you. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Steve, it's my pleasure. Believe me, it is. Good to talk to you.
Album, we're going to talk more about that in a second, but it is my extreme pleasure to welcome the voice of the Shadows of Night, Mr. Jimmy Sands. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
I should say...
What's going on there in New York today?
It's very, very humid. How about you in Chicago?
Same thing. Same kind of thing.
Many of you probably know her from her role as Sexy Sadie in Across the Universe. She has such a rich history of music that she's going to talk with us about. Miss Dana Fuchs, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Steve. Thank you.
He actually sang lead before and after Peter Noon joined Herman's Hermits. I can't tell you what a thrill and an honor it is to welcome to the show Mr. Carl Green. Hi, Carl. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
His two latest books, just in time for Christmas, are Ichabod Shaw and The House of Shangri-La. Before we get going, I'd like our listeners to know that our guest, Dino Sands, is a U.S. Army veteran. So before anything, I'd first like to thank you for your service to our country, sir. Welcome to the show, Dino.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Our guest is a wonderful author. I read her book cover to cover in a couple of days because I couldn't put it down. She is Elvis's fiance and really his last love. She's written a wonderful loving book called Elvis and Ginger. It is such a pleasure to welcome Ms. Ginger Alden to the show. Hi, Ginger.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
And our next guest is one of the most beloved TV actors, movie actors in television history and movie history. He's a true Renaissance man. He's an actor, producer, director, writer, an editor, cinematographer, and an artist. And we're going to be talking about his art in just a few moments. It's a real pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Stanley Livingston. Stan, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me come on.
We've just heard Let's Go Trippin', Scalped, Miserlou, and of course, that can be only one person. In 2009, he was inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2011, inducted into the Surfing Walk of Fame in Huntington Beach, California. And Cleveland's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame better get their act together because it's long overdue. His style has been credited with influencing, among others, Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. Guitar Player magazine is called Dick Dale, the father of heavy metal. He's a Grammy nominee. His song Let's Go Trippin' is regarded as the first surf rock song. He is the undisputed king of surf guitar. What an honor and a privilege to welcome to the show Mr. Dick Dale. Dick, welcome to the show.
3, 2, 1. Mr. Dale, you're on. Hello.
Welcome to the show. I'm going to tell you right now, I love you, Dick Dale, and I love your music.
I got to tell you right now, I have a sarcastic sense of Bostonian humor.
From our next guest, Mr. Rudy Ramos. That's from Geronimo, Life on the Reservation. We're going to talk all about that stuff that we listened to before. First, though, however, let me welcome to the show Mr. Rudy Ramos. Rudy, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Steve.
May I call you Rudy?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
I've been called a lot worse.
Join the club. What's the Matter, Baby? And Hurt by, to me, one of the, I wouldn't want to say underrated, but boy, she was a tremendous singer in pop history, Timmy Euro, and thankfully we have Mike Inarelli to keep her music alive and her spirit alive. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show Mike Inarelli. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'll tell you.
And those of you who are faithful viewers of Evan Ginsberg's Legends TV recognize that theme song by the great Cooley High. And our guest right now is author, movie producer, actor, TV host, radio host, the Renaissance man himself. What a pleasure to welcome Evan Ginsberg to the show. Hi, Evan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve. Really appreciate it.
And that song, Every Day I Write the Book by Elvis Costello, is the perfect intro to our next guest because it seems like every day he does write a new book. We're going to speak with author Gary D. Henry. Gary, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be wrestling. Just incredible. Pleasure to welcome to the show FTW's Rage. Rage, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
It's My Time from the brand new 2013 CD called Something Good from our first guest, the legendary Miss Martha Wash. Miss Wash, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, coming back to the show right now is the pop culture archivist, author, expert, Mr. Joe Russo. Joe, so great to have you back as a guest.
Hey, Steve. Last time we spoke, I think we were with Eddie Brigati.
Last time we spoke, you had one of the greatest surprises that any of my listeners could have hoped for. We had Eddie Brigati on. That was October 1st. I will not forget the date. Now, our first guest is with us, Mr. James Arena, the author of The First Ladies of Disco. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's great to be here. It's really nice to be part of classic pop culture.
Happy birthday, Heather. And as a birthday present, Heather, I have the one and only Angry Black on the line right here. Shelly Harris. Shelly, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to come on. And how are you, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Now, my guest, Mr. Tommy Marr. Tommy, first of all, thanks for being on the show.
Glad to be here, Steve. Always a pleasure.
And before Funky Nassau, you heard even a funkier song called I Like It by my guest right now, live with us on the phone. Thank you so much with your busy schedule. Oliver Shawn, how are you?
Hey, Steve. It's great to be here.
That's right, everybody can be a star. Everybody is a star. And the man who is going to tell us how that can happen is my next guest. Great guy, because I work with him every Saturday at Madhouse TV Studios. It's my pleasure to welcome the CEO and co-owner of Madhouse TV Studios, Mr. Tom Mealy. Tom, thank you so much for coming on with us.
Hi, Steve. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The author of the brand new Nilsson biography, finally a full biography, Nilsson, The Life of a Singer-Songwriter. Our guest is an award-winning author and broadcaster. He's a jazz critic for The Times in London. His book, Groovin' High, The Life of Dizzy Gillespie, won the 1999 ARSC Award for the Best Research of the Year. His New History of Jazz in 2001 won him Jazz Writer of the Year in the British Jazz Awards. In 2003, he won the Lifetime Achievement in Jazz Broadcasting. In 2010, he was named Jazz Broadcaster of the Year, and I could go on, but if I did, we would run out of time. He has so many honors, but he's written books about Cab Calloway, George Shearing, Fats Waller. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome Mr. Alan Shipton to the show. Mr. Shipton, thank you so much.
Steve, it's delightful to be here and to be talking to you about not just Harry Nilsson, but I guess we might talk a little about jazz as well.
What better song to lead us into this segment than Elvis's Girls, 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 because we have as our guest one of my favorite guests, and not just because I love his show, Smartasses Radio on smartasses.net. He's just a very cool guy, and he's got something very special coming up March 28th, and we're going to talk to him about that and so many other things. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the show the one and only Johnny Video. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I think that might have usurped your previous introduction of me. That's definitely the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you very much.
I guess it's Van Morrison's song. I'm sure you knew that.
From an album called Jimmy and Emmy. Yes, a Van Morrison song, Old Woodstock. Speaking of Woodstock, my next guest, I want to thank him, first of all, for hanging on, Mr. Jim Shelley. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Ukulele boy band, and I have with me on the phone now the genius behind that, the leader of Lloyd United, Mr. Lloyd Gold. Lloyd, welcome to the show.
Oh, hello. Thanks for having me.
Now, the song is cooler than cool. That's just me. Sung by our next guest from Kaylin and the Sky Thieves. Kaylin, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, Steve.
And I don't
the Goo Goo Dolls. And I must say, I can't think of a better choice of songs. And that actually was chosen by our next guest. She's a cosplayer. She is a musician, a writer, a model, an actress, multi-talented. But to speak with us about her cosplaying, mostly, Callie Cosplay. Callie, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
Every time you hear the song DJ, we must be having a DJ coming on, everybody. A few months ago, we had my buddy Cristino Melendez on. He was a DJ. And tonight, we have a real special treat with us because we have DJ Joe Patenti. Joe was a DJ in the 80s. And Joe was the DJ. You'd set up the turntables and get everybody dancing. So I thought it would be a good idea if we had kind of like a top 10, in no particular order, top 10 songs of the 80s, best requests that Joe had during his DJ days. First of all, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'd like to say it's a pleasure to be on Pop Culture.
And back on Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture, and our guest, Chloe Collins, who has a brand new EP called 5 at 15. Why? Because Chloe is 15 years old. And wait until you hear her artistry of singing, songwriting that she has for us. I had the pleasure of being on Evan Ginsberg's Legends TV show a few days ago with Chloe, and she's been kind enough now to sit down with us, and we're going to go song by song and kind of get into Chloe's head, how these songs came about, and we're going to listen to each one. It's going to be a great listening experience. First of all, Chloe, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.